What's up guys, it's Eric from Rare Candy and welcome back to another Celestial Storm deck profile. And today we're going to be taking a look at Rayquaza GX. I know this is one of the big decks a lot of people have been really excited to see. It's definitely, I think, one of the contenders for one of the better decks that is coming out of this set. And actually, this is the same list, too, that was used in our recent testing rounds video. So if you guys want to see how this deck looks in action, I will have a link to that below in the description for you to check out. And also, too, if you are, maybe a little unfamiliar with those testing rounds videos we normally post, they usually feature kind of our early, unrefined list to start testing with. So that means there might be a few things in here we could even potentially tweak or improve upon. So just something to keep in mind as we do go through this deck profile. But this, like I said, it's going to be Rayquaza GX, so let's get into it and see what it looks like. So we have Rayquaza GX, of course. 4 copies of this guy is our main attacker. A new card from Celestial Storm, as I mentioned. 180 hit points, Dragon type, Fairy weakness as expected, which is actually kind of nice because lately Gardevoir hasn't been that popular, but who knows, maybe after Celestial Storm things might change. But anyways, also has 3 retreat costs, so Rayquaza is kind of an awkward Pokemon to retreat, but it does have some other good things going on for it. First of all, it has this ability: whenever you bench Rayquaza GX from your hand, you get to discard the top 3 cards of your deck, then attach a basic energy in your discard pile to Rayquaza GX. And one thing that is important to note is the basic energy you attach doesn't have to be one of the 3 cards that you discard. So something important to point out, I don't think Rayquaza's ability would have been quite as good had that not been the case. But since it is what it is right now, it is a pretty good ability, so he gets some extra energy into play whenever you play this guy, which has synergy with its main attack. For a Grass, Lightning, and Colorless, does 30 times the amount of basic Grass and Lightning energy you have in play. So the idea you can see is between your manual attachments, the ability on Rayquaza GX, and Max Elixirs, which we play in this list as well, we're just trying to flood our board with a bunch of energy to take big one-hit knockouts with this attack. And then Rayquaza does have a GX attack as well. Just for a single Grass energy, discard your hand and draw 10 cards. So you have basically like a Sycamore on steroids if your hand ever gets in a bad spot. But like I said, the main reason we are looking at this card is for that first attack though. So let's get into some of the support that Rayquaza has. The first of which is going to be a 1/1 Lantern line. This is another new card from Celestial Storm, and actually one I think that hasn't seen too much attention, but I think does have some synergy here with Rayquaza GX. So Lantern's ability, it's actually very similar to EXP Share. Whenever your active Pokemon gets knocked out by damage from an opponent's attack, you get a basic energy that's attached to that Pokemon and move it to Lantern whenever it gets knocked out. So unlike EXP Share, this is an ability, which means it can't be field blowered away. So we've had EXP Share in the format for a while, and it's seen, varying degrees of success in the past, but just with how popular Field Blower is, a lot of times you won't get much value out of a card like EXP Share. So that's why I'm trying out this 1/1 Lantern line, just because it will help keep our energy in play and help us be able to do more damage throughout the course of a game. So next up we have a Latias Prism Star. It's going to be a new Prism Star that we're getting in Celestial Storm as well. And we're looking at, for this single attack that it has, just for a single colorless energy, it does 30 damage, and you attach a basic energy from your discard pile to each of your benched basic dragon Pokemon. So this is really nice because we're in a situation where our Rayquaza gets knocked out, we lose a lot of energy, we can pivot into this Latias Prism Star and get all the energy back on the field and maybe set up some knockouts thanks to that 30 damage as well. Pretty straightforward card, guys. Nothing else to really say about it. It's just kind of like a better version of that Baby Yveltal we've seen in the past, or maybe even kind of like the Baby Volcanion, but for Rayquaza GX here. And then we do have a backup attacker. That's going to be a single copy of Tapu Koko GX. So Tapu Koko GX is a card we've actually had for a pretty long time now at this point, but let's recap what it does just in case you guys may have forgotten. It has this ability, Arrow Trail. Whenever you bench Tapu Koko from your hand, you get to move it into the active spot and put any lightning energy that are attached to your other Pokemon onto Tapu Koko. So you can throw this guy down and take some surprise knockout sometimes. Its first attack for 2 lightning and a colorless does a solid 130, which it's an okay amount of damage. You're going to two-shot basically everything with it. But when I think this card gets really exciting is when we look at its GX attack. For the same attack cost, Tapu Thunder GX, it does 50 times the amount of energy your opponent has in play. So this is really cool because out of nowhere we can throw down Tapu Koko, make it come to the active spot, and use Tapu Thunder GX to take a huge knockout potentially out of nowhere. And even though it is lightning type, one thing that's great about Tapu Koko in the current format is that it's not weak to anything. So that means it's not going to be weak to things like Buzzwole or Lycanroc that we currently have, which normally push lightning Pokemon, I think, kind of out of the metagame. So solid little backup attacker. And then just to round out the Pokemon line, guys, we have 2 copies of Tapu Lele GX, of course, for that Wonder Tag ability to grab supporters out of our deck. And we do play Max Elixir in this deck as well, so we do have the option to power up an Energy Drive as kind of maybe like a fallback attack, but most of the time, like I said, Wonder Tag is going to be the only reason we're really playing Lele. That's going to be it for the Pokemon line, guys. Going on to our supporters, we have 4 copies of Professor Sycamore. We are an all-basic deck with the exception of that 1 Lantern, but by and large, like I said, this is essentially an all-basic deck, so we can pretty safely afford to max out our counts of Sycamore. We don't have things like rare candies floating around or a lot of evolution pieces, so most of the time, just being able to play Sycamore, discard your hand, draw 7 is fine, because you can play down usually most of the resources that you currently have. Speaking of 4-ofs, we are also playing 4 copies of Guzma as well. So one reason we're playing a 4th copy of Guzma is because Rayquaza does have us discard the top 3 cards of our deck. So that means sometimes we are going to mill away resources that we want to keep. So that's the reason I am committing to the 4th Guzma here instead of just playing the 3. I think 3 would normally be fine, but like I said, since we do mill our own resources, I like the 4th Guzma, and it just gives us another option for a little bit more aggression. But next up, we have 3 copies of Cynthia for some alternate draw power, and then 2 copies of N as well. Favoring kind of the lower count of N, higher count of Cynthia and Sycamore, just because we are a pretty aggressive deck, and Rayquaza can take prizes pretty quickly. So that's why I'm not playing a huge count of the card, but nevertheless, we do still want the option just to punish our opponent maybe for jumping ahead on prizes or something like that. So then next up, going on to our item cards, we have 4 copies of Max Elixir, as I've already mentioned before. Get to look at the top 6 cards of your deck, attach a basic energy there to one of your benched basic Pokemon. So between Max Elixirs, your manual attachments, and Rayquaza GX's ability, we have plenty of ways to accelerate energy and start swinging for large amounts of damage with this Rayquaza GX. Next up, we have 4 copies of Fighting Fury Belt. Again, it's another card I'm kind of maxing out for the same reason I'm maxing out Guzma here, is because we are going to mill away our resources, and I wanted to have plenty of outs to these, even in case of those situations where we are discarding our Fighting Fury Belts. So Fighting Fury Belt's a tool. It gives your basic Pokemon 40 more HP, and they do 10 more damage to your opponent. So this is kind of nice. It is going to allow us to hit for better numbers in certain situations, but the plus 40 HP is really the reason we're playing this. I think a lot of people might initially gravitate towards playing Choice Band just because it is going to set up knockouts a little bit better. But with the Rayquaza GX, you really just want to keep energy in play. That's going to be the big thing. As long as you keep energy in play, you're in a good spot to win. So when you're playing Choice Band, that makes your Rayquazas a little bit easier to get knocked out, which means you can more easily just lose 3 energy from play. And that's not really something you want to do. Whenever a Rayquaza gets knocked out, that's effectively minus 90 damage on your next turn. That's why I do like the copies of Fighting Fury Belt over Choice Band in this particular deck, because like I said, we just want to be able to keep our energy in play. Next up, we are playing 3 copies of Floatstone. That is going to be another tool we're playing. So if you did notice, Rayquaza GX has that pesky 3 retreat cost. Tapu Koko has a 2 retreat cost. A Lantern has a 2 retreat cost. A lot of things with awkward retreat costs here. So we want some Floatstones in here to give our board a little bit more mobility in this deck. And also, too, it's just a pain to have to actually manually burn attachments to retreat, because every time you discard energy to retreat, you're losing damage. So that's why we want some Floatstones in here just to increase, the amount of damage that we can keep on the field at a given time. So next up, we're playing 3 copies of Ultra Ball and then 2 copies of Mysterious Treasure. So, of course, just to search out our Pokemon, and one thing that's nice, our Rayquazas, Latios, and Tapu Leles are actually all searchable by Mysterious Treasure in this deck, since you can grab Dragon or Psychic Pokemon with it. You could potentially invert this count, like 3 treasures, 2 Ultra Balls, but since we have the Tapu Koko and the Lantern line, I wanted to give us a decent amounts of outs into drawing those. Especially in the case of the Lantern line, it's just a 1/1 line, so getting the right piece when you need it might be a little challenging. So that's why I am favoring the higher count of Ultra Ball here. But both cards also good because we can throw energy in the discard to be able to get out with Rayquaza GX at some point as well. So then next up we have 2 copies of Field Board to discard our opponent's tool cards in stadiums, especially things like Parallel City are going to be very annoying for this deck because we really want a full bench. We want all of our Rayquazas in play, we probably want a Lantern in play, a Latias Prismastar in play, so we really want to make sure we can clear Parallel Cities from the field, and of course get rid of things like Choice Bands and Float Zones on our opponent's Pokemon as well. Next up, we have 2 copies of Rescue Stretcher just as a form of recovery. This is another card I think normally I would be content just playing one of, but since we are going to be milling resources from our deck, if we do mill our only Rescue Stretcher, we're going to be in some trouble. So that's why we're playing the 2 count, just to be able to get Pokemon back into our deck or back into our hand. And being able to get them back into our hand in particular is actually really nice. I think some people might gravitate towards playing something like Super Rod since this is a Max Elixir based deck, but I like Rescue Stretcher because all of our Pokemon really have a bunch of these coming into play abilities. Like Rayquaza, you have to bench it from your hand, same with Tapu Koko, Tapu Lele. So I think we have enough Pokemon that have these coming into play abilities that justify the Rescue Stretchers over Super Rod in this deck. And we also have another form of recovery. We have 1 copy of Palpad, just to reuse our supporters, because as I've mentioned, we do discard our own resources with Rayquaza GX, so we want to be able to get these things back into our deck if we somehow have to mill away resources that we might not want to. And then to round out the trainer cards, we have 2 copies of Parallel City. So Parallel City, a stadium card you guys are probably plenty familiar with. Whichever player has the blue side facing them, they can only have 3 bench Pokemon, which is really the main side of relevance for this particular deck here. So this is going to be very good against mirror matches, just as an example, because I do expect Rayquaza to be a pretty popular deck once Celestial Storm is illegal for the Worlds format. Also against things like Malamar variants, they are very reliant on having a full bench. Same thing for Zoroark variants. Just Parallel City has just kind of been one of the best cards in the format over the past several sets. So it just makes sense to have in here, I'm pretty sure. So that's going to be the entire trainer card line. Let's check out our energy we have here. We have 3, 6, 7 grass energy, and then we have 3, 6, 7 lightning energy as well. Just to make sure we can always hit these things off Max Elixir. It is a pretty high count, but it's nice because, like I said, it increases our odds of Max Elixir's working, our odds of hitting energy with Rayquaza's ability, etc. So yeah, guys, that is going to be our first draft of Rayquaza GX that we're going to be trying out here. Definitely a deck, like I mentioned, I do expect to be pretty popular. And actually, over on our Patreon at patreon.com/rarecandytcg, I have an article detailing some of my early testing impressions of this deck. So if you guys want to learn more about Rayquaza GX, I will have a link below in the description if you want to learn how to access that content as well. But definitely stay tuned, guys. We're going to have a ton of Celestial Storm coverage over the next several weeks. Also, feel free to like and subscribe, and if you can support our channel by becoming a patron, like I mentioned, over at patreon.com/rarecandytcg, or by picking up something from our online store at rarecandytcg.com, it would mean a lot. But with that, I appreciate you watching, and we'll see you for the next one.